Are you hiring a fiduciary advisor? And just because someone says he's fiduciary or she, does that mean that is someone you should go with? And I just want to talk about this real briefly because it's a rant of mine. I had written a letter. It's going to be published here in the February or the December issue of the Journal for Financial Planning, which is a trade rag, one of the trade rags. Got many trade rags. A lot of these you get for free. The JFP you got to pay for, and it's not cheap, but it's worth it. Anyway, so I wrote a letter to the editor because they had an article in there by a guy who's talked about fee only versus fiduciary, and the idea that fee only advisors don't have any conflicts of interest relative to commission based advisors. And this guy's argument, which I agree with wholeheartedly, was that we've been so hammering on commission based advisors, allowing the idea to sink in that a fee only advisor is somewhat better. Now, a fee-only advisor is a fiduciary. A commission-based advisor can't be because that person's selling product, and when he sells a product, that's how he gets paid. That's in order to get paid, he has to sell you something. And so people say, "Oh, he's not a fiduciary; he's selling stuff." And this guy's argument was, "Well, fee-only advisors, they have a conflict of interest too. I mean, they have to put you in investments in order to get paid, right?" And so my letter to the editor on this, which I'll just read verbatim here just a second, absolutely. As I like the fact that this guy's addressing the issue of a fee-only advisor and how it relates to fiduciary, but I don't think it goes far enough. I think the industry as a whole really needs to look in the mirror and say, are we offering the right service? And can you actually hold yourself as a fiduciary under certain ways you get compensated? And I don't think you can. I really don't. And I think, so the idea for you, if you're still watching this and you're just the end consumer of financial planning guidance and are willing to pay, and you're falling under the auspices that a fiduciary, somewhat holier than thou, certainly walks on water compared to his commission-based cousins, which are evil. I challenge that, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So let me just share this with you because look, I've been in this business a long time, and I've seen tons of different compensation models, and I just don't like the idea that a commission-based compensation model is inherently bad, and a fee-based or fee-only compensation model is inherently superior. I don't believe that for 2 seconds flat. So here's my article, and I say a question for fiduciaries: do you use the 4% rule? So again, the idea was, we want to be more fee only because that's more fiduciary minded, i.e., we're taking your best interest client. We're not going to do what we think is appropriate. We're going to do what we would do for our own mom, essentially. That's what the fiduciary wants you to believe, that they're only going to do stuff that they would tell their own mom to do. They're guiding you as a fiduciary as opposed to selling you something. I say, regarding Ian Harvey's column about being a fiduciary as opposed to a fee-only financial planner. And again, Ian's article was no compensation model is conflict-free. And his whole point was we need to be more fiduciaries more than fee-only. Here's a question to planners who hold themselves out as fiduciaries while charging asset under management fees. Do you use the 4% rule in your planning? If so, I don't see how you can hold yourself out as a fiduciary. Why? Because the 4% rule does not include taxes and fees. Thus, when fees, say 1%, are added along with taxes, the 4% rule actually becomes the 5.2% rule. And that's assuming your client is only in the 12% tax bracket. Larger distributions from portfolios to pay AUM fees lead to higher taxable income, which leads to higher taxes. Never mind the potential increase in taxes on Social Security, increase in Medicare premiums, or even moving a 0% taxable asset, capital gains, and qualified dividends into a 15% range. When a fee-only / fiduciary advisor is charging 1% a year on AUM, how does that increase in account distributions affect the client's safe withdrawal rates? So if you're not bringing that up with your client, then how do you hold yourself out as a fiduciary? Ultimately, the industry, in my opinion, will never be seen as legitimate until we stop charging for AUM, assets under management. The idea that only a small portion of the American public can hire us is offensive from the outset. Yet, we continue to want to look to the other professions, attorneys and CPAs, as our model. Last time I looked, anyone with a specific need could go hire an attorney or a CPA regardless of their net worth. Sincerely, Josh Scanlon, Principal Heritage Wealth Planning, Alpharetta, Georgia. And this is what ticks me off. Well, I'm a fiduciary. All right. I look at your best interest. I would never tell you to do something I wouldn't tell my mom or myself, essentially. So you're going to use the 4% rule. Yes, we're going to use a 4% rule because it's tried and true. It's based on it's based on evidence-based research. Evidence-based research. Okay. So I have $100,000 in there. How much can I take in my portfolio? $4,000 a year, Josh, $4,000 a year. And you'll never run out of money based on our evidence that we have historically. Okay. How you get paid? Well, I charge 1% a year of assets under management. Okay, so am I cutting you a check from my checking account? No, I just take it from the account. Well, how does that work? So if you're charging 1% a year, that's $1,000 on that $100,000. And on top of that, I want to take 4% a year out. That's $4,000 on the $100,000. On top of that, we're going to take distributions, which are going to be taxable, presumably. How does that work? Because that's no longer a 4% distribution rate. That's at least a 5% distribution rate, Mr. Fiduciary. But you're selling me on my retirement planning as if as if the 4% rule is applicable, when it absolutely is not. If you're charging 1% a year, it's not applicable. You're charging me 25% more than what the 4% rule would say, and yet you're using a 4% rule, which is inherently inferior because I'm paying 5% of my assets. I'm paying you 1%, and I'm taking 4% a year out. So what does that look like for my retirement planning when I use a 5% rule? Huh? How can you hold yourself out as a fiduciary if you're not talking about that? I don't get it. I mean, literally, I don't. And I chastise the industry if they're doing that. And look, does anyone do that? I don't know. I don't know what other people are doing. But if you're holding yourself out as a fiduciary advisor and you're saying we can use a 4% rule to get you a squared away financial plan, and then I said, well, how do you get paid? And you say, I charge 1% a year of assets under management. Well, those two things are inherently in conflict. They mutually cannot exist. They're mutually exclusive. If you're charging 4% a year, if you're charging 1% a year, and you tell me I can take 4% a year on my portfolio, I'm inherently taking 5% a year on the portfolio. This is not that hard to explain. And on top of that, if I'm paying tax on that, I'm taking more than 5% a year. Drives me up the wall. No, this is why I go back, and let's see, some guy, my man Richard up in New York sent me this today. Let's see if I can't find it. Let's see if I can show it to you. Can you see that? Don't be that guy. See that guy? I hope you can see this. See that guy? Richard. That's awesome. Lighting cigars with $100 bills, Mr. and Mrs. Client. When you're paying an advisor asset under management fee, you are not literally, you're metaphorically lighting cigars with $100 bills because you are wasting your money on services that cannot be justified. They cannot give you better returns. They cannot. If they're not using their 1% annual fee in their total portfolio return projections, they are wrong. And you are essentially lighting your cigars with your money. There are better ways. Garrett Financial Planning Network, hourlies. You go to XYPN, which I'm no longer affiliated with, but XYPN, hourly advisors. I charge a flat fee. Better ways. Yes, is that conflict of interest? You're doggone right, it's conflict of interest because we are better the way we charge than the other guys who are charging AUM fees. Especially the other guys who are charging AUM fees are not including that extra fee in your portfolio projections because they're avoiding a huge issue, which is you are absolutely taking more distributions from your portfolio than what they're letting on. And that should not be allowed to happen. You should pay somebody for the advice. The advice is, I'm going to pay you $250, $1 million. I don't care. Here's what you charge for the advice, Mr. What I charge for the advice, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. Do you want it or not? Yes, I do. Okay. Then we know. That's how it should work. And it doesn't work like that right now. And the fact that even makes me even worse is that you got to see this guy lighting cigars on $100 bills. A lot of times those fees that you don't even see coming from your account because you don't open your statements. And so you don't even see the invoice. Yes, they'll invoice you. There'll be a line item bill on your account. Yeah, you had $855 taken from your portfolio this month to pay for advisor fees. But unless you open a statement and go online, you don't see that. You don't see it. But when you do, I'm telling you, you'll be, whoa, I'm paying the equivalent to this guy my first mortgage? Nah, wrong answer. So it's my diatribe of the day. Don't light cigars with $100 bills. Don't pay investment advice fees. Don't. Find other ways to pay for investment advice, for actual financial planning advice. There are many, many different methodologies. Paying for investment advice is not worth it. It is not. If you're going to do it, that's fine. Just make sure it's detailed specifically in your projections on your retirement plan and your portfolio. Because if it's not, it's absolutely wrong. It's wrong, wrong, wrong. And everybody will recognize that's wrong. Everybody will. So don't forget to subscribe. If you like rants like this, I'll come across them every now and again because I do rant. And this is my place to rant. So we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Oops, gotta stop this. How do I do that?